let's get started. Aloha. So I appreciate for coming and joining, and some of you joining from Zoom. So I would like to talk about my relationship with Terry Arnold, and we share a professional relationship grounded in a mutual commitment to a disease called inflammatory breast cancer, and commonly we abbreviate as IBC. Some of you know that my previous life is I was an executive director for Morgan Welch Inflammatory Breast Cancer Research Program and Clinic at MD Anderson. So inflammatory breast cancer is one of the most aggressive breast cancer, and I think that Terry will talk about what the disease is about, but I want you to understand it's rare and aggressive. So from patient advocate perspective, it is very challenging, because when you don't have a lot of disease happening and when it's aggressive, then the tendency is federal money or non-federal money doesn't really attach very well. And in that setting, Terry has founded IBC Network Foundation, and the uniqueness of this foundation is, one, of course, it will advocate for the patient, but not just advocating for the patient, how you interact at the research level in multi-institutional manner. Now, of course, this started with MD Anderson, but the impressive part of Terry is that with her energy and her leadership, this fundraising and advocating to make the research to happen, or the clinical investigator to be engaged, happen with Dana-Farber, Vanderbilt, and I think there's many more that she has advocated. So advocacy is very diverse. It's not one approach, and this is not right or wrong. However, that I think it's important to see a different perspective, and that is one of the reasons that Terry to come here, way from Houston, to kind of mingle with advocates, but I'd like to see the clinician, also how to really provide an accurate story for really inspiring the community. And this is not about IBC, but it's really about how we see the relationship with community and patient engaged in the cancer center or any kind of hospital setting. So mahalo to Terry, so please come over here, and welcome to the islands.
Okay, so am I going to use this? What is going to be better for your... Either one? Okay, I think I'm going to try this one since we're recording. Can you hear me? Okay, terrific. Thank you for having me here, and I'm a big fan of Dr. Bueno, and I feel very honored to be here. But also, as he said, inflammatory is rare, but I'm hoping that the things I can share with you can be applied to other disciplines, other things you know. And the header of this talk was the patient voice, the story we haven't used kind of thing, because I want you to see the power of your voice, the power of your experience, because I feel like you are the true expert when it comes to this disease. You are the expert on you and your body. And so I titled my talk, Walking on Quicksand, because having breast cancer was nothing I would have expected. I felt like I was just walking on quicksand. Nothing was what I would have thought. First of all, I would have never thought I would have ever gotten breast cancer. I didn't think I was immune to it. But my family were all diabetic. They don't say they got diabetes, they caught the sugar, you know. And so that's what I was concerned about. So I'm going to kind of launch into this, and you're going to hear some things I hope might make you laugh, because I'm trying to bring a little levity to something serious, but also there's some serious things to do. And so, Tripit, there's something that's popping up on the screen. Are we good? Okay, just making sure I don't screw anything up. So this is how my story and my diagnosis and how this led to advocacy. Let's see if I can push the right button. Okay, it was May around this time, it was my birthday in May, I woke up with one breast red hot and swollen. 4 months and 5 doctors later, the only thing they could all seem to agree upon was I did not have cancer. I literally went from being told, Mrs. Arnold, there's nothing wrong with you, to we're so sorry, Mrs. Arnold, we missed it. You have IBC and you only have a few months to live. The doctor who saw me said because IBC was so aggressive and I'd been misdiagnosed for 5 months, she was going to give me 2 chemotherapies to control the pain and start me on a hospice. I was 49 years old. I thought I was in relatively good health. I was at a major cancer center in my area, in Houston, near NASA. And I thought, well, if I'm going to die, I'm not going to die here. I ran to MD Anderson, and they said, if we're really lucky, we can help you, and maybe we can make you live 18 months. And as I say, spoiler alert, I didn't die. Almost 20 years out, I'm very grateful. But I've seen a lot of things along the way, and that's what motivated me to get involved in advocacy. And so there's a bit of a pause here, not to spill the tea too soon on what happened, because think about it. I was misdiagnosed, made fun of, told I couldn't possibly have cancer, and then to go, oops, we missed it, you're going to die, with nothing in between. And to me, that was just a real injustice that I had a hard time dealing with. So I got involved in advocacy literally just to get diagnosed. And this is where you're going to think the doctors in Houston, Texas are as dumb as a box of rocks, and they really aren't. But this really happened to me. One doctor told me that I must have had a pulled muscle behind my breast, making it appear larger. Now, I was thinner before I had cancer, and I was probably a smallish C-cut bra. My breast swelled up so big overnight, it was a double D, and I was having to pad my clothes because people could tell something was wrong with me. My breast didn't appear larger, it was larger. One doctor told me I had an infection in my pituitary gland that, it's in the base of your brain, affecting my mammary glands. He said, made my breast go wonky. And I said, well, wait a minute, if that is making my breast go wonky, why isn't the other one wonky? And he said, well, breasts are a mystery. And I said, well, maybe they're a mystery to you, but that makes no sense to me whatsoever. One doctor told me my breasts were aging differently. And I assured him they were the same age. And he got mad at me and wouldn't see me anymore. So here I am losing ground on who will see me as I'm being made fun of. One doctor told me I had menopause in one boob. And when I asked him to repeat it, he got mad at me. And I said, that just makes no sense. So again, I was just hitting every hurdle. And I felt like if my nose was red, hot, and swollen and cocked off to the side, they would have done a test. But there was something about my breast that all made it seem like it was a joke. One doctor was insistent I had an infection, and it did. It was red to the touch, it swelled up overnight, and it was very swollen and hot, but all my labs were normal. He wanted me on a low-dose antibiotic for 12 weeks and just told me to go away. And I finally got very upset. I went to the doctor one day with my daughter who had a bad cold that wouldn't go away. And I told my doctor, I said, look, this is looking really nasty. I can barely lift my arm. My breast has gone black. What do you want me to do? I'm really sick. And he told me if I didn't leave his office, he was going to call security because he was tired of me calling. I mean, so I literally had to advocate for myself. And so sometimes I tell the doctors when they do get an IBC patient, look, if they're a little wackadoo, give them a break. Because a lot of them have been through a lot of stuff just to get in front of someone like a Dr. Waino who knows what to do. And so they can be a little bit stressed out. So as the kids say, wow, to go from you're crazy, there's nothing wrong, to oh my gosh, we missed it, with no break. And they told me to prepare my funeral. And that's where I was. And I thought, I'm 49 years old. This doesn't make sense. Surely we can do better. I wasn't a hopeless person thinking I wasn't going to make it, but I also knew I was very, very ill. And the pain was overwhelming, and it was very hard to think. So now I want to give you a little bit of the history of the disease that brought me into this injustice mentality. And like Dr. Waino said earlier, rare diseases don't get noticed. Inflammatory breast cancer was first written out by a fellow in England named Charles Bell in the 1800s. And until very recently, and that's supposed to say October of 26. IBC did not have a medical code. I'll have to fix that. IBC did not have a diagnostic medical code. Rare diseases don't get one. That's really important. And no disrespect to the NASA astronauts, but did you know there's a code if you die in space? There's a code if you fall off the toilet and die. Literally, there's a code. Rare diseases don't get codes because they just don't get that bandwidth. And also, due to the fatality of this disease, it's hard to track. So recently, as of October of this last year, IBC finally got their very first medical code. Now, that's important, but just so you know, a medical code does not dictate care. So there's another level to go here. We do not have a prior detection before stage 3. When that patient wakes up with that breast itchy, hot, swollen, she or he, there's been a few men, not very many, that patient's already at stage 3. You could have had a mammogram on Monday, wake up on Wednesday, have another mammogram on Friday, and it'd be clear. It presents at stage 3. We don't know what it looks like before the stage 3. Education for rare diseases are not taught. As you can imagine, it's about real estate. There's only so much bandwidth. Like when you go to the San Antonio Breast Cancer Conference, I heard you've been there, and I'm really glad. I hope you come and look for me. We have a booth there every year. IBC has not been presented from the main stage until recently, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, in that 40 plus, almost 50-year history, because they have to go for what they think you're most likely to see. But I am convinced that this orphan form of breast cancer is not as rare as they think, and that the women just died so quickly, and then it was just viewed as neglected advanced breast cancer or whatever. So, and then what got me going was we got rareness, hard to detect, dismissiveness, all these things. What is the landscape about the money? And I found out in the last 20 years, I had Dr. Oliver Bogler, who's a male breast cancer survivor. He was at MD Anderson. He's now at the National Cancer Institute, do a search for me. In the last 20 years, IBC had only received 113 grants. So you can imagine how low that funding is compared to what generic breast cancer gets. And that disconnect really bothered me because IBC makes up the highest percentage of fatality of all breast cancer deaths. So it's like, okay, I get the rare, I get the less likely, but in my mind, if we can stop something very fast, think of how we could apply that to something else. I think that's important. So not only was it orphaned, I felt orphaned. And IBC wasn't listed on Susan G. Komen's website in 2007 or the American Cancer Center. It wasn't listed anywhere. And I wrote them asking, would they put a cut line? They were like, no, that's very crazy rare, it doesn't happen. And I could only find occasional passings in medical Arnolds, but mainly obituaries. But in 2006, MD Anderson opened the first clinic in the entire world devoted to inflammatory breast cancer. I was diagnosed in 2007, and I am fortunate to be part of that clinic. There was something they call the class of 2007. There was 100 of us that were put in a special population pool to be studied, and treatment was literally changing before our eyes. I was number 97 out of that 100, and the treatment they put us through was brutal, but it worked. And so what happened was somebody did a news story. I was known for something else in my community, and they made a passing mention about inflammatory in this news story, and they mentioned my name. It was like the bubble just popped. And all of a sudden, I'm getting text messages from women all over the world. The whole world had my phone number. There'd be a woman's breast in the text saying, is this normal? It's like, who are you? And they go, well, I don't want to tell you my name. I got a picture of your boob. Can we talk about your name? I want to help you. And it was always the same way. Hey, I hear you live in Houston. Can you help me? How does this work? I've never met anybody else. Because you got to remember, MD Anderson stuck his neck out, made the first clinic in the entire world. Not that people haven't been treating it, but to make a dedicated plan. And one of those women was this woman right here. And she was a physician who had actually diagnosed inflammatory breast cancer, but missed it in her own self because she was pregnant at the time of her breast swelling, and she thought it was the milk coming in. Her name is Lori Gilgrenham, and I will always owe her a huge thank you. But the women kept coming, and I couldn't hide. There was no place to go, and there were so many of them, and they were just so young. So I started networking. How can I help support these patients? How can I help MD Anderson? Social media was the key because I didn't have any money. I didn't know how to talk to people. There was no organization that wanted to even talk about this. Matter of fact, I was told we were kind of scaring people and to be quiet. I went through a lot of adversity. So I started an online support group with only 7 women, and it was international. And then I took it to multiple levels. We opened groups all over the world in multiple languages. I lobbied Komen, American Cancer Society, everybody, and it was not well received, but we did get there at some point. But like I said, the women kept coming, and it got to the point, I got to a breaking point. I had gone to 6 funerals in 4 weeks, and not one of these women was over 40. I was losing my mind. I didn't know how to deal with it. I was literally just melting down because there was no time zones in my life. I was being contacted by women all over the world, and I didn't want to walk away. And I finally did something that I'm not a problem causer. I'm someone who likes to kind of be behind the scenes, but I kept getting pushed forward. I literally crashed into the office of Dr. Wendy Woodward and said, "Give me something to do. I cannot live this way anymore." And and I'll have to back up and tell you what happened. I was a hot, blubbering mess. I don't know why I went to her office. She was my radiologist. She was probably the one I saw the last. Maybe it's because she was the last in my care. I don't know. Or maybe it's because she was, I don't know. But I literally went to her office, caused a scene in the lobby, and one of the nurses felt so sorry for me. She said, "You know what? She's here. She'll see you." And she walked me down these deep, long hallways. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've just crashed into the office of this really important researcher, and I don't even know what I want to do. I just got to do something. And so this is where we're going to get to the part about the patient as a partner, because I was building a voice, and I was trying very hard to make sure it wasn't just my voice, that I was building everyone else's voice. I was taking all of their stories and moving them forward, even after they passed away, talking about them, reminding people, trying to get some bandwidth going, and that traction was getting there. And Dr. Woodward, when I crashed in, she was typing and had her back to me, and I said, "Give me something to do. I can't do this anymore. I'm losing my mind." And she paused, and she slowly turned her chair around and goes, "You know, I've been waiting for you to get mad. You've never been mad. You've been so grateful to be alive. I've never seen you." I said, "I'm mad now. I'm mad now. And I want to use that for something good." She told me there was a little project she needed money for. It was only $30,000, and she couldn't get it. And she said, "It's not going to work, but I need to know if it's going to work, because it's blocking me from doing something else." And I thought, I have 5 kids. I have spent $30,000 at Sonic. We can do this. And so I went to Lori, who I showed you earlier, and said, "Can you help me raise $30,000? We told every friend we knew the project we wanted to fund. We asked them to donate $25. We said, "We are not a charity. If the tax write-off means something to you, don't donate." We had $33,000 in 5 weeks, and we gave it to Dr. Woodward. And this is Lori, another Lori, who has been a friend of mine for forever. And you can see, even though this is a good 5-6 years out of treatment, I was still very swollen. I had significant lymphedema, and I was quite swollen from it still. But we wrote a check for her to fund that project. We filed for a not-for-profit, and we realized that there was a gap we could fill to give Dr. Seed money, and we have a researcher that we're involved with here that we gave her $180,000, and she went to the government and got $2.8 million. But without that seed money, I just assumed when you guys were at a major hospital, a research hospital, they gave you a bucket of money and said, "Here, study." I didn't know you had to go get it. And I didn't know if you didn't have a bucket of money, you didn't have a job. And so this disconnect is where the IBC network wanted to come in, to where money could go to rare diseases, and hopefully one day we could be the bigger money too, but we can be the seed money and help build. So we focused on that. We thought the best way we could help patients was with research. And also we do other things about education. So we formed the charity because we realized, and these are the numbers, if you want to take a screenshot of it, it's still pretty accurate, how little money goes to metastatic, how little money goes to inflammatory. And if you're a guy, you're just out of luck, you know. And also metastatic breast cancer, the stuff that kills you, whether it is triple negative, triple positive, whatever, gets nothing. We are all about early detection and prevention, which is a great gig if you can get it, but what about the person who's actually battling cancer right now? And so that gave me a place, a niche, because honestly, I was very hesitant to form a charity. It seemed so vain. I had cancer I'm going to start a charity, going to write a book, go to speaker circuit, all that. No, I didn't want to do any of that. I just want to help women live. But I realized there was a place I could really put some rubber to the road and make a difference. And I think we have. This is a chart to help you understand these numbers. Look at that little sliver. The most aggressive, the most fatal, how little it gets. And this is again out of Dr. Oliver Bogler's research for me. So this is an orphan disease. Orphan means it's rare, fatal, hard to track. That's a medical term that gets applied. We wanted to take that orphan disease forward. And also, IBC, only 10% present with a lump. And this is a younger woman's disease. I was 49 when I got it, but it's typically much younger women. And younger women aren't getting mammograms, that the mammogram may not show anything. And younger women are having babies. And often they're told to have the baby or wean the baby or whatever, and then come back. Well, now she's also got another delay that's causing her. And then this big disconnect. And so we had to find a compelling way to get the public's attention. I wanted to be a little in their face, but not too much. So we came up with an idea called The Silence is Killing Me, because there was literally nothing. Now, you guys now are going to see, if you Google in inflammatory breast cancer, there's quite a lot there. And I'm grateful. But honestly, a lot of that is because the IBC network was pushing for them to do it, because believe me, it was not an organic thing. We came up with a campaign. This is a young woman named Emma, and we hired her to be a model, to put pink tape on her mouth and say, "The silence is killing me." And we put this all over campus, all over colleges, campuses, and it just took off like crazy. But it also got me in trouble, because Facebook decided I was sharing porn. I was in Facebook jail a lot. I got a lot of pushback for that, but we promised we weren't trying to do anything harmful. We wanted to bring a conversation to a neglected place. It raised a lot of money in the fact that we also, rather than having galas and big runs and things we didn't have the money for, we came up with the idea of doing scavenger hunts, a low-cost event. You know, a game you played when you were a kid, like maybe, you know, Linda would show up at the park with $25, but Brandy would tell every friend she knew, "Hey, I'm doing this," and she walks in with $2,000. We've had one Hunt for Hope raise $180,000 in one afternoon with almost no overhead. Now, that's the biggest one we've ever had. Some only raised $5,000, but that is what we did. And we're only 12 years old, and I think we should get to shave off 4 years because of the pandemic. We put almost $2 million into research. We run very lean, and I run the organization as a volunteer. And also, what's happened is we now have an IBC network in Canada, the UK, and Australia that are following our model. And I think we would have had more around the country, around the world, if the pandemic hadn't happened, because it kind of slowed things down. So this is my story, okay? But I want you to see my story led into that patient voice, that voice we're not using. Because I'm sure Dr. Wayne has heard from patients, how can I help? What can I do? We want to do something, but we don't know what to do or how to be an advocate. My background is in advocacy. I started the first rape crisis program in my county. I did a lot about missing children, and some of the things that they do now about missing children is some of my work. But advocacy is the act of supporting or speaking up for or promoting a cause, policy, or an individual's influence of decisions. So there's 3 ways to break it down: advocating for yourself, advocating for a friend or family, or advocating for policy change. In the beginning, I was advocating for myself. I used to joke with my husband, if I die before they figure this out, I literally want my tombstone to say, "She told you she was sick," because I knew something was wrong with me. But nobody could figure it out, okay? So I was advocating for myself. But then I started advocating for other women when they were saying, "Hey, can you teach me?" Or like Karen, who's going to be in Project Lead soon. She's going to learn how to take that voice, that experience to another level. Because one of the things I want to get into is affecting policy. So if a woman does present with these symptoms, that they aren't told, "Well, you're under 40 or too young, and you have to do all these things that don't relate to us." So I want to get to a place where our advocacy is helpful at a really high level. And I think we have to understand advocacy to be effective. It's more than just being a loud mouth. You have to be strategic in what you want to do. And we also need to give a strong global message so we're effective. Like people would say, "Well, let's get everybody to get a mammogram really young." A mammogram misses it. So let's don't ask for that. Let's figure out what we need to ask for. And that's why I love it that the researchers are here, the doctors are here, because you can tell us what we need to ask for at your end, and we can tell you what we need to ask for from our end, because there are things that we know as a patient that makes us a different level of expert. Okay, so how can you use my experience? Patients and families want to help. We need them to serve on committees. There shouldn't be any committee about breast cancer that doesn't have a patient voice there, patient experience there. We need to be part of the decisions about how you run a clinical trial, or how do you navigate, or what is the barriers. Like I was asking MD Anderson recently, how many of you are not getting someone in your clinical trial because they can't afford housing? And they told me, oh, that's not a problem. It's not. Well, what they don't know is the patient made the decision to not be in the clinical trial because of housing, because they can't afford a hotel, they can't afford to travel, they can't. The ones that they got, there's a bias. Yeah, I worked around that. I can afford it, or somebody helped me, or whatever, or I sold my house, I don't care. There are things we know that they don't see. So your presence in the room can really matter. So we have to figure out where to start. So it's identifying a need or a project. And so Dr. Waino has some very clear ideas, and he cracks me up because he always has huge projects. He will text me in the middle of the night and go, can I have $1 million? I go, of course, sir. Of course you're going to have $1 million, because he's got ambitious plans. But it's not just all about money. It is about strategy. So when you can ask your patient and your family to get involved from their story, let's figure out what we can do for long-term improvement. And also, the human face matters. When someone say, well, statistically, that doesn't ever happen. Well, it statistically happened to me. It statistically happened to a lot of other people. And to give your story, and I think a lot of patients are shy to tell their story, use your face, let people know. And don't be too generic. Be a little brave. Use some raw words. And don't just say breast cancer, say inflammatory, say triple negative, say triple positive, whatever, to really educate them in that. I think those things are important, and I have to beg for stories harder than I beg for money. It really is hard to get patients' stories, and there is so much power in your story. People look at me and they go, oh, you're older, you're fine. But when I tell them about somebody who's 19 years old dealing with this, they go, whoa. Oh, now I care. You know, and if that's what works, we need to use that. So how to find your advocates. One of the things that we did, and I heard somebody talk about just getting accepted into Project Lead, which is a great organization to help you learn how to be an advocate. But they're highly focused on early stage cancer. And so what I wanted to do, I'm a Project Lead grad, and I took that inspiration to make something called the IBC Learning Academy. And we did it live on Zoom. It was in the pandemic, so we couldn't do it like this. We just recorded it. It's evergreen on our website. And it will train you. It takes a day and a half if you do it straight through, or you can break it up. There's no test at the end. You can back up, redo it. I strongly encourage you to take it. If you're not interested in every section, that's okay. But you're going to learn the unique needs, and the Dr. Wainos of the world help you put this together. And then for those of you that are in the research world and you need an advocate on your grant, a lot of places are now not requiring just one advocate, they're requiring two. And they don't want a generic advocate. They want someone who's got some skin in the game about that project. We can help connect you with advocates that are trained by the ones who went through the IBC Learning Academy. So I'd love to have some of you take this. And then also too, we have tried to make the course as global as possible, although that's a bit of a challenge because not every country has the same approvals, but we're working on that. And we're also trying to realize that environments can be culturally different, of not only what is accessible to them financially, what's accessible socially. Like, I live in Texas. The Tuscaloosa shame was not that long ago, and a lot of cultures of color shy away. Okay, and I'm sure there's cultural barriers here. I grew up in a Polish-speaking home, and my family greatly distrusts doctors. Greatly. And I know I got made fun of when I was driving to MD Anderson for all my treatment. I drove 20 miles, and my sisters would say, how many free parking garages did you pass up to get to that hospital that charges you? That just drove them nuts. Oh, that $12 a day is nothing in compared to what I'm going through, you know? But there's cultural things that get in the way. And I think one of the things that was, we did a paper that was submitted to San Antonio on what was the single largest barrier for someone going to a specialty center. I thought it would be money, but I found it was family pressure. There's something about having to leave your community to go maybe where there's excellent care, to go someplace with specialty that freaks your family out. It just is really hard. And I talked to so many women that said, my mom can't handle that I have to go to someplace special. That just makes it too real. So there's always more to it than just money or just access to care. The community environment really matters. And if you don't address it in that way, you're missing something that's extremely important. I think it's the first step in the ladder, actually. So I hope that some of what I've showed you can help give you some ideas for advocacy, because we started fundraising with no money. We had a clear goal. We had support. We were incredibly transparent with what we were going to do with the money, what was the cause. We involved as many people from as many disciplines as we could to figure out how to do this. We were definitely swimming upstream in a pink, weary world. But the thing is, if we don't tell them, who will? And I am not anyone of importance. I have no personal money. I don't have legacy. I don't have all those connections. But I think the fact that I took other people with me and tried to replicate and be a good team player made it be successful, and that's how it's gone global. And I hope that there's something I can bring to you that can inspire you to try what will work in your community. And also, I'm looking forward to learning from you so I can do the right thing to be of good support. And I write a lot of heavy letters asking for some big things. And I didn't want to sign it sincerely, your pal, whatever. I signed everything hope always, because I live in that. I live in hope always. I see hope. Even when someone's taken from this disease, I see hope from what's learned. I see hope in you, and I want people to come away with that feeling. But I want to show you one last slide I put on here, because hope lives on. When I was diagnosed, my daughter was pregnant with her first grandbaby. I didn't think I'd live to see her, and I almost didn't make it. She's the tall one on the end. I have 18 grandchildren. The oldest is only 17. There's a lot of us. And I'm holding one of the littlest one here at the bottom. And it's funny, because I didn't think about this with you, Dr. Ueno, but there's a picture of me when I'm in Japan, and one of the doctors is behind me, and she's laughing. He'd asked me to come speak in Japan about some things. It was a huge moment for me to see what I was doing go so far. And the baby was eating my pearls, and it was just a funny moment. It made me happy. And I always love to share this picture. But also, when I mentioned San Antonio, how they never put IBC on the main stage, I asked and asked and asked. And one day they said, you know what, we're going to give you a little toehold. If you can get 3 specialists to come up, we'll give them a time of the day that nobody comes, and we'll let them try. Well, about what, 10,000, 12,000 doctors come to that, Dr. Ueno? There was 1,000 doctors in the room that day. And they said, you know what, there is an interest, you're onto something. And this panel picture with me on it meant a lot to me, because 2 years ago, San Antonio Breast Cancer Conference, inflammatory breast cancer was presented from the main stage at the request of the physicians. And so there is traction there. So I don't want you to ever feel hopeless about what you're being asked to do. And I'm looking forward to hearing back from you. And to my IBC, I don't know if there's any IBC survivors here, but I know there are breast cancer survivors here. And I'm just so grateful that you're here, because you're the expert I want to talk to. Hope always. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to chat. Because I don't know what you expected, so you can tell me, oh, that wasn't it.
Okay, so thanks for the inspiring stories, and always she has too much energy to me, but that was a joke. But okay, so I'd like to open to the people who's attending, and you could actually post your question, and Tripit could actually see on the Zoom. So anybody has questions, or go ahead.
Are you retired? And are you doing this full time?
I was 49 at my diagnosis, and I had done things where I tried to mainly stay home with my kids, but I did own some businesses, and so I did kind of have my finger in the work world a little bit, but I tried to have a lot of flexibility. When I was diagnosed, my job fired me immediately. I was working at a bank, and I was up for promotion. And they said, "You're going to die, and we don't want to hold the promotions." They fired me. Highly illegal, but it happens all the time. When I got better, I told my husband, "I don't want to go back to work. I need to do this. I don't know what this is." Originally, it was just starting support groups. I did not want to start a charity, but 5 years in, I started the charity, and I ran it full-time as a volunteer. That was something very important to me. I think I'm creating a job. And I'm about to have a bonus birthday. I was originally diagnosed at 49, and I'll be 68 in a couple of days. And
Hooray.
I do this full-time.
Thank you.
We have a quiet audience.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, do you have some tips for how to educate or engage researchers and our physicians to include patient advocates in their work or research? I mean, after talking to you a few years ago at San Antonio, we since have launched a community scientist program here, and some of those community scientists are here today. But every cohort, we still struggle with getting researchers to take on a community scientist for their project. And since we're so new at this, it's hard for us to kind of explain or provide a lot of examples on how we can be involved. And so it's also confusing for the new community scientists too, because there isn't like a clear-cut path on what they could do, because it could be anything really, and depending on the research project, could be anything under the sun. But those too many options is leading to this lack of direction or how to, engage. Yeah.
So make sure I understand, you want to know how to engage patient advocates?
No. The researcher side.
From
like
the
how
researchers.
to convince the researchers to take on.
Well, that's a great question. That's what I thought you meant, how to get them want us. Okay, because first of all,
Right.
sometimes there's a big personality disconnect. I find most researchers are very introvert, thoughtful, reflective, and a lot of us advocates are kind of loud mouths, and we kind of scare y'all. And we are scared to death of y'all because we think y'all are superheroes. So there's a disconnect. But also, I never realized how much y'all don't see us and we don't see you. Dr. Wayno treats patients. The researchers don't treat patients, right? And it really hit me one day when I was at San Antonio and I was going through the posters, and I walked up and this young gentleman started telling me all about his posters. Whoa, slow down. You're way over my head. I'm a patient. He started crying. And he said, "I've never met one of you. It feels so good to see you. I was about to give up. This is so hard. And now I want to not give up." So I think finding a way to get them together is important. You need your advocates to have some training to know what to offer. A simple way to start is when they're applying for grants, because to have an advocate on that letter can matter. But they need a little training to know. So you don't want to be just a cold call, "Hey, will you write a letter saying I'm great?" You talk to them a little bit, explain your science. So what you might want to do is invite some people that you think would be interested in advocacy to come to a little tea party or something. I find that patients don't want to come on campus for an event. If you do it off-site somewhere, I know that's a financial problem because you can do things on campus cheaper. And this is such a beautiful campus, maybe it wouldn't be a problem. But I know MD Anderson tries to host parties on campus and patients won't come. They find it triggering to be in that setting, even if it's just for a meeting. I never did because I never had a bad experience, but some people feel very differently. So if you can find a way to put together a little invitation, we'd like you to meet a researcher. Can we talk about that? That might be a soft start to get that going. What do you think about that idea?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we can try to do more kind of networking, more casual, I think, events. I think a lot of times when we do things or when UH Cancer Center does things, it's a bit more grants. It takes a lot more planning and whatnot. And I think sometimes that even for Breast Cancer Hawaii kind of inhibits us to do more. like we could do more smaller ones. I feel like instead of waiting for a larger.
Okay. Well, I think those
That's our
baby steps are
opportunity, yeah.
important. And also, I think it's important to make sure the researcher feels not pressed upon to have somebody and like,
Right.
well, how will that help them? And
Yeah, that's
we need to make sure what you need. And sometimes it's something as simple as I find that many of these researchers speak multiple languages. And so when I read over that presentation, it's like, oh, I know this is the word you meant to say, but you use this word and that word isn't right. Let me show you. You know, and sometimes that just, because to have somebody just proof it is sometimes a soft way to deal with it. Anyway,
I just want to add this. Sorry, I know you guys have questions, but I want to talk about this relationship with researcher or clinician from more of cancer center. So when I was the director, executive director for the IBC program, one of the things I implement is complete open policy for patient advocates to join the research meeting and sometimes strategic meeting. Now, this is something that we have to improve here. We had patient advocates, long history, PAC, Community Advisory Board, but that said that have we actually been successful embedding into the process of the cancer center is something that has not seen strong enough. And part of the reason is even if I'm intentional, there is a resistance or opening up that much because people say, well, these are confidential. This is University of Hawaii type of thing. So they could add, or including myself, I could add many things. But for us to, so this is just kind of my personal belief. I'm not stating as a director of the cancer center, but my belief is if we want to transform the entire community and care, you do have to have patient advocates, and these are not just regular advocates, but more of a community science level that allows to embed. Because if you don't speak the language and we don't speak your language, you're speaking like Japanese and English, and it doesn't go anywhere. And this is what makes a difference. It can't be the afterthought of adding you on the grants, right? So that happens a lot. And we need to change this. And that's what I like to see here at this moment.
Yeah, like it'd be good to have the researchers say what they're comfortable with, but like if you'd be willing to do a Zoom with me, tell me a little about the science, so I can feel a little bit intelligent about the help with the letter I'm writing, but also to give me a deadline, because I can tell you, I've had researchers send me a text at midnight, hey, my letter's due tomorrow, can you write it? Let me know what your deadline is. So I make sure that I am available to write and print and do and help you, because I know your workload is huge. And because they really do want to help. And also, don't assume they don't know. I mean, people with PhDs in science get cancer. I mean, there's a lot of smart people out there that can, get on your team. I saw some hands going up. Yes, ma'am.
Terry, I was going to thank you for those comments about including the researcher. I had the honor of some of us in this room to be part of that first class of community scientists, which is an excellent program. And in support of Dr. Ueno and everybody who worked, I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Lee as the researcher. And it just so happened that when we had met at a conference, and he did have the focus of breast cancer and what he was doing, and with the support of Dr. Awase and Dr. Lee as part of our training, so to speak, as community scientists, we met at least every 3 weeks, and we discussed research. And many of our conversations, to include one other community scientist, was that translation of patient care and research and how we could understand what was happening in each other's world for best outcomes. And it does take time. It takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of support, and it takes a lot of trust to share a story with a researcher focused, or maybe the researcher focused, like here, well, we can't be emotional, we have to be more, but there is that collaborative practice between the two, and I think that's where Dr. Ueno is trying to do for UHCC, and there's many of us who are willing to put ourselves in that position to help support in the advocacy role. So thank you for these suggestions and what you're doing.
I'm looking forward to see what you do. And one thing to think about too is sometimes your advocate, accept your invitation because they can't pay the parking fee. So sometimes something like waiving a parking fee might make it easier for somebody to come, or just small things like that. Because a lot of times they don't want to tell you that it's burdensome for just to get to be there. And so that helps. What were you going to say, Linda?
I just wanted to draw a comparison between you and one of our PAC members. She's from Boston, and she's also a patient advocate for the Dana-Farber. And she went through a similar kind of community scientist training. But she has your background in business. And I think that's an asset, really, because your suggestion about writing a patient letter for grants, that's exactly what she did. She did that for one of the young researchers, and he got the grant. So I see that as an opportunity for us, to really do what you did and what she did.
Well, I'd love to see it happen. And it might seem weird to think that we need breast cancer advocates when we're in a world that's been kind of drowning in pink for a long time. We hear about breast cancer so much, it's almost ad nauseum, but think about it. We've been stuck in the same conversation for about 30 years. Prevention, early detection, all that. It's time to take it to the next level and talk about research funding and what's going to save lives. So it's time for that fresh conversation. And it is a business. And I don't mean the business of medicine. I mean the business of getting your message out. I saw somebody in the back.
Wanted to know,
Wayno's running at you with a microphone.
no, you had mentioned that projects often want advocates that have skin in the game, as you said. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that means to you?
Well, I think what's happening is sometimes people have their advocate that's associated with their hospital. And what I'm seeing is as budget funding is getting cut and tighter, the committees are being more critical about who is asking for money and what does that mean. So if you can get a patient that's had inflammatory breast cancer, or maybe a family member who's lost somebody, it's just a little closer. And it tends to resonate better with the committees that are making decisions. But sometimes it's very difficult because these women have been through a lot and they've already given so much. But if you can make an easy path and let them see their voice matters, because I think they really do want to help. So when I say skin in the game, that they've been there or they've done that or they lost someone and they can echo that. Because one of the hardest things when you're an advocate is not to make it about you and your person and your story. You want to echo and carry everyone's story with you. And so when someone's got that skin in the game, that they care, not just, I don't do this because it's happened to me. I do it because it's still happening. So when I say skin in the game, it can be a few levels, but I don't know if that really answered what you need, but I think we need to be a little bit more drilled down about who our advocates are that are influencing decision and also helping ask for larger money. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Yes, ma'am, Linda. I knew you would have great things to say.
Sorry about it.
No, don't be sorry.
There's other ways that people can contribute, if not through the community scientists. Like Cynthia and I have been lobbying in our state legislature
Yes,
for our bills. Do you do the same thing in Texas?
we do. We do lobby, and one of the things that we're working on is to try to get insurance companies to make a caveat that if a patient is presenting with inflammatory breast cancer, that they be put to the front of the line, that they don't have to go. First of all, I tell you, if you're under 40, you don't need a mammogram, you could just wait. Or maybe we shouldn't get a mammogram, maybe we should skip straight to an MRI since mammograms aren't the most effective thing for us. So we're looking at some of those policy changes. So we do advocate on a government policy level. And also the state of Texas did something very unusual that was done by advocates. The only reason they have a program is a bunch of women went to the government and said, look, everyone comes to Texas for care. Let's open the first clinic in the entire world. And the state of Texas underwrites that budget. It is the only medical center that is underwritten by the state of Texas. And it is the only medical center that's underwritten by any one single entity. And that made a strong program. And that was all advocates, women sharing their stories. And the Texas gives $2 million a year.
I have one last question. I promise. After this,
don't be sorry.
keep quiet. In the state of California, they passed a bill that allows patients to choose any clinical trial that's available in that state.
Yes.
Because they have the Kaiser system, and then they have Blue Shield, Blue Cross, and other. So do you have a similar law in Texas where a patient can choose to be whatever clinical trials available to them in whatever?
Do you know? I don't know. I don't know if we have a similar law.
And do you think it's necessary?
Well, I can tell you one of the things that we've worked hard on was inflammatory breast cancer patients were precluded from being in any clinical trials in the beginning because they said we just ruin their numbers. And it was really interesting because when TDM1 became, I'm blanking on the name, TDM1 is Kadcyla. Okay, they took a bunch of patients that were in hospice, it's like a movie moment, that were in hospice, and they put them on TDM1, and they were all IBC patients. And almost all of them survived. They said, well, if IBC patients could survive, we know these others could survive. And that became one of the biggest breakthrough in cancer for a while. So yes, us having access to clinical trials is important, but for many years, we were precluded from it. So we definitely need more openness about that.
So Texas cannot deny for clinical trial access, and a lot of people don't know, but the insurance will go through two-tier to say that it's worth for supporting it. But after the third round, it goes at the state level. It gets removed from the third party to have a more neutral ground discussion. So in some way, Texas is a much more friendly in terms of clinical trials. The other is just going back to legislative support. You have to remember that 80% of legislative members supports cancer. And if you think about it, people who are against it generally do not do very well with their election. And I'm not saying to do something from the election perspective, but that kind of strong feeling that exists, even talking with IBC funding, this was really given by the state. It's really that much more stronger impact from patient and community of how the voting gets influenced. And so here we talk about policy and relationship, but we generally don't talk about the election effect. And this is something that I'm not in the position to say how you should be voting, but it is true that this has a significant impact of how we decide our policy and funding. Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have Dr. Bueno come look over my shoulder. I didn't realize there was a chat up here. And then someone said, I may have missed this, but why is IB considered different when it's not presented in panels? Do you want to come look over my shoulder with this question, make sure I read it right? And I'm going to answer something. See right there? Thank you for showing me that. There is one thing we've been lobbying on hard, and I think this is interesting because IBC is rare and it's not presented. It's barely taught in medical school, nursing school, all that. There's only literally a few chapters in the surgeons' scheduling. So there's a fellow in Massachusetts whose daughter died of IBC. Her name is Marmee Schulenberg, and she was a very famous TV actress. And so it got some bandwidth. And what he wanted to do when she passed away is make a law in the state of Massachusetts that inflammatory breast cancer must be taught in nursing school. Now, the idea of adding a law always makes me scared because for every one we add, I want to remove 5. But I thought it was very interesting. He wanted to be a law because whether or not inflammatory is taught in nursing school is optimal. It is usually a professor who saw it and cares about it and adds it in. It's not standard course curriculum. And that law is, I've testified, I've done a lot of things about that, and it's getting traction. And other states are looking at that. And if that law does get passed, and they think it will, it's going to start a domino effect. And I know they can't do courses on everything, but to me, a cut line or 2, just, hey, FYI, if you should see this, think that, to get that going. So that is something that would be a wonderful thing to lobby for. But first check, make sure your schools do it. And if they do, tout them out and say thank you. But what do you think about this question? There's a few popping up.
So thank you so much for sharing your story. On the topic of being more selective with advocates, do you think that someone who wants to be an advocate but maybe has not been diagnosed with breast cancer can contribute? how can this group of people, family members of people diagnosed, friends, researcher, help advocate?
I love it when someone's never had cancer. I don't want anybody to have it. So I don't want someone to feel just because they didn't have it or didn't experience it, can't help. We all have places we can help, right? And so you have to think about what is your comfort zone. Like sometimes I tell people, can you please write articles? They go, oh, writing is boring. Well, maybe it's boring for you because you're really good at it. And it's easy for you, but it's not easy for somebody else. Or maybe you want to spearhead a fundraising campaign or do something that fits your world so you don't burn out. Everyone has a place at the table. And if somebody wants to contact us through the IBC network, I can, and maybe funding research isn't your jam, I can connect you with somebody that might be a great fit with you. But everybody has a place here.
Any other questions?
I'm excited to see there are some questions in the chat. I didn't even think to look.
There were 20 people on the line.
Woohoo! That's great. Well, if you want to send me a message, you can find me. I'm incredibly accessible. As I said, the whole world's got my phone number. But if you email me, text me, Facebook me something, I'll get back to you. And if I don't get back to you, I'm not too busy. I still end up in Facebook jail all the time. I've been in Facebook jail twice last week.
We didn't
crazy.
talk about too much, so we have a couple more minutes, but the impact of social media.
Social
And then,
media is huge.
Yes,
You want to say something? You are the king of social media.
right.
No, I'm not kidding. He's kind of famous.
So it is something that Hawaii is missing completely. And this is not just about advocates, but our researcher. Very limited level of engagement. And not only that, there may be individual level, but interaction with cancer center, social media, we are still need to enhance the center media, social media activity. But these are all dots that we have to connect, and that brings synergy. So that is one thing that MD Anderson has done extremely well, having a significant number of clinicians, researcher on social media and linking to the advocate activities. And it's something to think about. You want to say anything
When
about
we
it?
started, we didn't have any money, and I didn't know how I was going to get the word out. And Facebook is free. And even though I have good insurance, we spent buckets and buckets of money going through my care. I had over 250 appointments in 365 days at MD Anderson. That year I was in treatment. I drove 4,000 miles, and to give you from a reference, that was just appointments. That's from Texas to the Canadian border and back, and miles left over. It was brutal, and it was expensive. I gained 60 pounds. My shoe size changed. There was money just flying out the windows about things not related to cancer, just clothes, or I wasn't home to cook for my kids or whatever. So it was pretty brutal. And so I go to my husband and go, hey, I want to do this thing. He goes, well, of course you do. You're a little crazy. But social media was free. It's also what's bit me in some ways, because I get put in Facebook jail a lot. They say, you're talking to too many people you don't know, you don't have a connection with, you're not friends with, what are you doing? And it's like, I'm talking about inflammatory breast cancer. But one thing I'd do a very big personal favor, if you look me up on Facebook, and you don't have to friend me or stay friends with me, but tag me, tag Dr. Waino. Say, I was at a talk today. I learned about a rare disease that has swelling. We didn't do the symptoms, but it's swelling, redness, rash, shooting pain, overnight change. And the best way to describe it, if something happens just to one breast and not the other, that is warranting an examination. Because if you're gaining weight, losing weight, having a baby, changing your birth control, whatever, chances are it's going to affect both. But a sudden change to one is an indication of something wrong. So talk about that and use the words. Don't be generic. And don't say things like, if you feel moved, donate. I would like you to donate. I would like you to learn. I hope you will tell somebody. Tell 3 people about this and really give them a place to take action. Because I can promise you, someone's going to contact you within a few weeks and say, hey, I got a problem. And what you did helped me know how to get help. And you can save someone's life.
All right. So mahalo nui loa. Thank you very much for your wonderful talk, and I think really appreciate all of you for asking questions, and I think it was a very interactive session. So please give another round of applause to Harry Arnold, and we'll close the session. Thank you again.